All right, today we're diving into a story that's, well, it's one of the most incredible and honestly bittersweet campaigns in all of American colonial history. It's about a huge achievement, but also devastating loss. A victory that came with a price tag nobody could have seen coming.
And that really gets you thinking, right? How can a great victory actually lead to an even greater tragedy? I mean, we usually see a win as the end of the story. Roll credits. But what if the real fight starts after the enemy gives up? Yeah, this story, it's got a twist, and it's a powerful one.
Okay, let's picture this. The year is 1745, and in New England, this wild, almost crazy plan starts bubbling up. Their target? The French fortress of Louisbourg. This thing was a monster, a stone giant on Cape Breton Island that pretty much everyone thought was impossible to take. I mean, look at this matchup. It's just staggering. You've got this colonial force, right? 4,200 guys. But these aren't soldiers, not really. They're farmers, they're merchants, fishermen, a total amateur army. And they're going up against Louisbourg, literally one of the biggest, baddest French fortresses in all of North America. The odds? Let's just say nobody was betting on the New Englanders.
You know, big historical events can feel distant. So to really get what this was like, we're going to see it through the eyes of one guy, Sergeant Robert Seaver. He was 43, from Massachusetts, a regular family man who, like so many others, answered the call. And get this, he brought 2 of his sons along with him, right into the thick of it.
And just getting there was a nightmare. Seriously, they set sail from Boston, 90 ships, heading straight into the North Atlantic. They had to dodge these massive ice fields, literal icebergs floating around, threatening to just crush their wooden ships. The weather was so bad it held them up for weeks, they didn't even make landfall until late April, where, thankfully, the Royal Navy was waiting to help out.
So they finally arrive, and you think the hard part is over. Nope, now the real work starts. This wasn't going to be a quick fight. This was a siege. 47 days of just grinding it out. We're talking backbreaking labor, danger around every corner, and pure raw grit.
And for a guy like Sergeant Seaver, forget about rest. His day-to-day was a relentless cycle. He's out there making sure guys are digging trenches, sometimes with cannonballs flying overhead. He's organizing the absolute brutal work of hauling cannons around. He's setting up guard schedules. And on top of it all, he's got to keep a bunch of tired, freaked-out amateur soldiers in line. Talk about a tough job.
Just try to imagine the sheer physicality of it. We're talking about dragging cannons that weigh tons, not on roads, but through mud and over rocky ground, day in, day out. This wasn't some clean strategic battle on a map. This whole thing was won by the pure sweat and muscle of every single one of those guys. So, you've got this ragtag army up against a stone fortress. You're probably thinking, okay, this is going to be a heroic but tragic failure, right? Well, that's not what happened. Somehow, against all odds, their constant pressure started to work. And what came next was, well, it was something nobody saw coming. Here's the genius part. The New Englanders found an abandoned French gun battery. So they did the only logical and totally exhausting thing. They started dragging the enemy's own cannons to new spots. And then they turned those guns right back on the fortress and just hammered the walls for 47 days straight. Talk about using their own weapons against them. So the French governor is in a tough spot. His walls are crumbling, there's no help coming, he can either face a final, bloody attack or just give up. He surrendered. And just like that, the impossible mission was a success. David had taken down Goliath.
But, and this is a huge but, this is where the story takes a really dark turn. The surrender wasn't the end. Not even close. For these victorious colonials, the celebration was about to end because their deadliest enemy wasn't the French, it was something else entirely.
Now, during the actual fighting, the siege, their losses were surprisingly low. About 130 men total from combat and sickness. For a military campaign like this, that's amazing. They must have felt like they got off easy. Then, winter came, and the colonial army had to stay and occupy the fortress they just captured. And over that winter, 561 more of them died. Think about that. That's more than 4 times the number they lost in the entire 47-day siege. When you see the numbers side by side like this, it's just brutal. The real killer wasn't the fighting. The real catastrophe happened after they had already won.
So what happened? Well, the fortress was a wreck from the siege. There was basically no sanitation, and you have thousands of men crammed together. Then this brutal Canadian winter hits, and disease. Nasty stuff like dysentery and typhoid just ripped through the camp. The fortress they fought so hard to win, it became a death trap.
And if you think it can't get any worse, you're wrong. The tragedy wasn't over. For the guys who actually survived all that, there was one last slap in the face coming. And for Sergeant Seaver, this story was about to get a whole lot more personal.
3 years go by. And then, some politicians in Europe sign a treaty. And just like that, Louisbourg, the prize that cost so many lives, was handed right back to France, traded away, for a city in India.
Can you even imagine the rage in New England? These people had sacrificed everything, their friends, their sons. I mean, some estimates say Massachusetts lost 8% of its entire adult male population in this one campaign. And for what? For bargaining chip in some European political game? It's just infuriating.
And that brings us back to Sergeant Seaver. He made it through the siege. He even survived that deadly winter. But he didn't come home the same, because one of the 2 sons he brought with him didn't come home at all. And in the end, it doesn't matter if he was killed in the fighting or by disease. The result is the same. A father had to go home without his son.
So it leaves you with this haunting question, doesn't it? Taking Louisbourg was this incredible military win, a huge moment of pride for the colonies. But when you add up the cost, that horrible winter, the political betrayal, the empty seat at a dinner table for a family like the Seavers, what does victory even mean then? What's the true measure of a win like that?